We're talking about technology and communication today, and that includes the internet, cell phones, and the news. Oh my. Let's start off by talking about the internet. My goodness, where do we even begin? I guess a good spot would be, what is a computer? Right, because you can have a computer without the internet, but you really can't have the internet without computers. And really, at its most basic definition, a computer is just a thing that does data processing. It can look like this, or even this. But really what we're talking about today are these digital computers, the ones that use binary, ones and zeros, and specifically those computers that are all linked together. Right, because one computer alone is pretty cool, it's a nice tool, but stuff starts to get wild when you link them together and form a network. This is a history class after all, so let's take a second to talk about the first network, ARPANET. This was the network designed by the Advanced Research Project Agency Network, or ARPA, and it was ARPA's network, so ARPANET. This was originally funded by the Department of Defense, as was ARPA, and now the agency is known as DARPA. I think the D stands for Defense. And this was in the late 60s, early 70s when they were making this happen, so they weren't doing TikToks on this first network of computers. In fact, it was really kind of basic, rudimentary. It's more of a tech demo than anything. The first message ever sent via the ARPANET was login, and it was so big that it crashed the entire system. So that gives you an idea of where we started and how far we've come. And from that starting point, the ARPANET, spread and was refined and was developed until it was eventually transitioned from government control to private control, and it's now the internet.
It's an oversimplification of events, but yes.
So what? Why am I making this such a big deal, right? The internet is, for you guys, actually really for everybody, is a fundamental part of our everyday life. I mean, just to go to school, we're using the internet almost all day, every day. And aside from this past kind of year and a half or so's craziness, it's a fairly normal part of your life. This is what you guys have always known. You were born in a world that always had the internet. My generation was, and I'm going to sound old, I'm going to sound like, you kids and your internet, but no, my generation was the last one to, experience an analog world. I mean, I know I was born in the mid-90s, but it was, compared to now, fairly analog, and really the switch to fully digital happened about midway through my childhood, and so maybe that's why the transition is so stark to me, because I was living through it. I mean, everyone was, but you know what I mean. But my first-hand experience with this transition isn't even why I think it's so important. As you study history, you'll see a pattern where once in a millennium almost, you'll get these inventions that truly alter the course of human history. Take, for example, the invention of cuneiform writing. That was the first real recorded writing that we know of. And it changed the game. All of a sudden, what you knew was not limited to what you could remember in your head. You could store things on something physical and come back to it later. It helped cities be founded. It helped empires be ran. Fast forward a few thousand years and you have the invention of the printing press, and the same can be said. All of a sudden, reading was democratized. It was more available to everyone. Now, the transition wasn't overnight. There were still problems with illiteracy, and there still is around the world today, but the printing press was another one of those pivotal moments. And guys, we're living through that right now. The internet is the most important invention surely in the past 100 years, but a very strong argument could be made that the internet might be the most important invention in all of human history so far. I mean, sure, with the internet I can show you this picture of Bingus. And Bingus is lovely, but the internet can also be used to inspire pro-democracy revolutions. But we'll talk about that in social media in just a second. For now, I want to talk about memes. Now, I'm dead serious here, guys. In 50 years, memes are going to be cited as primary sources in historical theses. Think about it. How many political cartoons have I had you guys analyze throughout this semester? Take Nast, for example. Not only did he create the Republican elephant and the Democratic donkey, he was also dropping absolute bangers like The Brains, and he was dunking on Boss Tweed. And really, these were the memes of the time. Right? And memes are often commenting on something. Right? I know these memes are lame. Don't at me. But, you can have a meme about Elon Musk and his propping up of Dogecoin, or Jeff Bezos being rich, and SpongeBob. And who knows what memes will actually stand the test of time and be cited in research in the future, or even might show up in the classroom of your children if you choose to have kids. We're writing the history right now. Only time will tell. And now it's time to talk about social media. And by this point, I'm sure you guys have heard all the kind of standard talking points about social media and how it's changing the game and communication and content and oversaturation, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you guys have heard this to a nauseating extent. But let's take a look at this from a slightly different angle. The concepts behind what makes social media so important have been around for centuries, thousands of years even. We're just working with better tools than what we previously had. Right? A blog or like a Facebook page is fundamentally not that different from something that Thomas Paine may have written during the late 1700s. But let's talk about another founding father, James Madison. He once said, "In all very numerous assemblies of whatever characters composed, passion never fails to wrest the scepter from reason." And really, that's just a fancy way of saying what Agent K said in that first Men in Black movie.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it.
A person is smart. You are smart. You are reasonable. But when people get together, especially they are of like mind, it, creates this sort of echo chamber where, like Madison said, passion can overtake reason. Social media is a tool, right? Like I said before, it can inspire democracy and help bring an end to oppression. And while the internet and social media can expose us to new ideas and help us become a more refined and nuanced person, like we've said many times before in our class, it can also shelter us from outside views. It can trap us in an echo chamber, and it can lead us to intensify whatever biases that we may have. And you're about to do your whole media literacy project, and we're going to have a few mini lessons in there about bias in the media, so I won't go too far into this, but everything that we're going to talk about there applies equally to the realm of social media. So before we wrap this up, I want to talk about a couple of honorable mentions in the realm of technology and communication, mainly cell phones and the 24-hour news cycle. Let's start with cell phones. The first real cell phone was demonstrated in 1973, and the thing weighed like almost 5 pounds. It was ridiculous. And in the early 80s, Motorola released that brick that you see right there, and that was like the first commercially available cell phone. And then from there, they evolved to be able to send text messages, and then you had like the feature phones, like I had this Envy Touch back when I was in high school. That was like the hot thing. And then, of course, we had smartphones start to come out in the late aughts, like I think 2007 or 8 was when the iPhone came out. And then, of course, at that point, the line between computer and internet and phone kind of blurred. And I won't go through it all again because it carried all the same implications as the internet carries. Only now you have a computer in your pocket, and really anyone can reach you at any time. And we're still seeing the effects of that, and it's too early in history to tell, but it kind of changed expectations. For example, in the workplace now, the line between at work and at home is blurring because of cell phones, right? Your boss can call you and tell you things at all hours of the day, and it's a thing that we need to consider. And finally, I want to talk about the news, or developments in the news in the late 20th century. So for the first handful of decades of its existence, news broadcasts aired at specific times, like, 30-minute long things every night, and they're on like one of the big channels like ABC, NBC, or CBS. And then after the broadcast was done, the channel might air a couple more things, and then it would go offline for the night. It would play like the national anthem, and then it would go to static. Well, that all changed on June 1st of 1980 with the advent of the Cable News Network, or CNN. This was the first cable network to run a 24-hour broadcast, and 24-hour news broadcast at that. And that changed a lot of things. This style of news delivery became very common, and at that point, stations no longer had to be careful, or they no longer had to choose what to include in their 30-minute broadcast. They were now looking for things to fill the airtime. Now, that's not necessarily good or bad, but it changes what you put into the news. And like I said, CNN started this, but everybody does it now. So this isn't, localized to one news channel or one, leaning of reporting. Everyone does this. And the invention of the internet only added to this. Now you not only have 24-hour news broadcasts, but you have websites that are constantly being updated all day, every day. And I guess the question I'll leave you with is, how did this new style of reporting news impact the world? I don't really know the answer to this. Perhaps it's too early in its history to see the full ramifications of this, but it certainly changed it. And I suppose that's the whole point of this video, right? We're living in this time of change. Humans can communicate with each other much faster than we ever could before. We're exposed to more ideas than we ever were. We're exposed to more just content, more headlines, more information than we ever had access to throughout our entire history. And of course, there are good things and bad things about that. All of the technologies that we talked about today, they're all tools, and it's up to the user how that tool is used. They have the potential to shed light on our human weaknesses, but they also have the capability to highlight our strengths. Think about what you guys have been through over the past year and a half. The internet has allowed you guys to overcome something that no other generation has had to do. You guys went from going to normal school every day to going completely online, and it was tough. Believe me, it was tough. But you guys did it. These technologies demonstrated to the world how capable and how resilient you all are. And these technologies are all still in their infancy. It's very early, but I'm really excited to see what you guys do with these, and I'm really proud of what you've already done. And I guess that's it. I guess that's the end of the final video for the year. So thank you guys for watching. Not that you had a choice, but you know what I mean. All right, bye.